Hey guys, and welcome back to Battlefront Updates. The Last Jedi. I think I've never been as torn about a movie if I like it or dislike it or both. Because when I came out of the cinema I was so confused about a lot of things in the movie because it wasn't what I expected, and obviously this video will contain massive spoilers for The Last Jedi, so if you haven't watched it, please click away right now. I simply wanted to give you my thoughts after the first viewing, the good and the bad, and I'm sure my opinion will change a little bit when I watch it the next time because I'm seeing it again next week, and I don't think I will be able to give it a rating, so to say, after this video, but I just basically want to give you my thoughts. Kind of unstructured, don't really have any script for this, but I just wanted to give you my thoughts right after seeing the movie, the things that really stuck out to me that I wanted to discuss, and I'm really curious to hear about your opinions and possible explanations for stuff, because some of the things I complain about might be things that are actually explained that I missed, because I've only seen it once. But I guess in short I can say that I neither thought it was the best Star Wars movie like I've seen some people say, and I don't think it's the worst Star Wars movie either. But it was so new that it's kind of hard to digest and process because it was far from a copy of The Empire Strikes Back, which was really good. And it had so many twists that I really didn't expect, but also some very weird storylines and scenes that I just felt like, how could they even put that in there? It didn't make any sense at all. So let's just start off with the beginning of the movie. I thought it was really good. I really liked the first entire scene of the Dreadnought and the Resistance escaping, and it was even made better by, of course, playing the Dakar map in Battlefront 2 right before seeing the movie. I thought something that part of this scene did wrong and the entire movie did wrong was that it had a little bit too much corny jokes. Like, don't get me wrong, I thought a lot of them were hilarious and I did laugh a lot, but sometimes they took it a little bit too far. Like the General Hugs part was good, but they could have stopped at the first General Hugs, but now they made like almost a minute long scene where they were just like going back and forth. Oh, General Hugs, can you hear me? I mean, it was fun, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it could have a little bit more of a serious tone in the movie, and a lot of scenes were unfortunately ruined by too much of these corny jokes in my opinion. I mean, the entire scene with Chewie and the porgs and him about to eat a porg, I feel like that scene could just have been cut. There is so much more important stuff that could have been in there. But if we start off with the two main overall complaints that I have about the movie, I would say it's the lack of backstory and lack of world building. That's something I missed from the prequels. We get a bigger perspective. What's going on in the entire galaxy? Not just here's 10 X-Wings versus the entire First Order and that's all we will see for the rest of the movie. The only other thing we really get to see from the entire galaxy is Canto Bight, which I didn't quite like at all. That storyline wasn't really something I enjoyed. I mean, I understand the place. There's a lot of different places in the Star Wars universe, so that makes sense. But the whole storyline there and the escape felt more like a Harry Potter movie than Star Wars to me. And I will get back to that actual story part later and why I think it really wasn't very good. But in terms of the world building in general, I would have just liked some hints about what's going on in the rest of the galaxy. What are these guys doing? Why is no one coming to help them? And you know, it just feels like a really isolated skirmish almost, and that's all we get to know, whereas in the prequels, and I know a lot of people don't like the prequels, but that's one thing that I really liked about them, that they gave us a bigger perspective. Even in A New Hope, they talk about the Senate and what's going on there, so they really could have done a better job kind of portraying the entire galaxy, not just this little part of the galaxy. And when it comes to backstory, I mean, it's basically just one thing: Snoke. Don't get me wrong, everything really doesn't need a backstory. A lot of the things were not explained in the movie, and I'm fine with that, but Snoke, I think they did a really horrible job with Snoke. Not the death scene, that's actually one of my favorite scenes, I will get back to that. But the backstory. They've built up the entire canon universe around the Sith and the rule of two, and how they're getting more powerful and powerful every time a new Sith rises. And it all builds up to Darth Sidious, who becomes strong enough and gets enough influence to completely, or almost completely, wipe out the Jedi Order and take over the galaxy. And he's supposed to be the most powerful being at this time, and that's after so many generations of Sith getting stronger and stronger. And then all of a sudden we get a random character pop up that Andy Serkis says is more powerful than Sidious, and he's been alive long enough to see the Empire rise and fall. And that just gives me so much questions. Where did it come from? Where did they learn everything? Did Sidious teach him? How could he gain the powers they had without being a Sith? There's just so many questions that contradicts previous stuff in the Star Wars movies and how the Sith worked. And I would have been happy with any explanation. Just a sentence saying where Snoke came from. But they completely left that blank and instead had a 1-minute scene where Chewie is about to eat a porg. Like, that scene alone, not a big deal. But the fact that that's their priority here bothers me so much, that they don't care about actually building up a proper backstory to some massive character like Snoke and explaining how he got the powers. How can he be more powerful than the most powerful Sith that has ever existed? That just really rubs me the wrong way. And now back to the actual death scene of Snoke. That, on the other hand, as a scene, was my favorite in the entire movie. I really liked that they killed him off the way they did and so quickly, because a lot of people expected him to survive for the episode 9 and then a big battle between him and Luke maybe would occur and it would be just like Return of the Jedi. But now they just out of the blue killed him like that. And not because he was too weak, because he could definitely best both Rey and Kylo without a problem, but because he was arrogant, just like Darth Sidious. I didn't give Kylo enough credit because Kylo was actually pretty darn clever here. He was turning the lightsaber and he was about to strike down his enemy just like Snoke said, but he did it in 2 locations at once, therefore tricking him. So I thought that scene was great. The entire scene with Snoke dying, the fight against the Praetorian guards afterwards, I really don't have any complaints there. It's all about the backstory. If they would have given him a proper backstory and then killed him off, I would have been fine with that. And I like the fact that they weren't really afraid to show, I don't know, not gory stuff, but you actually see his body just slide off, and then when Hux gets in there, I think his like lower part of the body just drops down from the throne, which was a pretty bizarre but great scene in my opinion. And that's one of my favorite moments in the movie. And the other favorite moment is when Admiral Holdo just rams Snoke's ship with the cruiser in Lightspeed. That was such a beautiful scene when it all became quiet and you just see the entire ship split up like that. And it was one of the most beautiful scenes I've seen in a Star Wars movie so far. And in terms of just the visual stuff, there was a lot of really beautiful stuff in this movie. The Battle of Crate was amazing in terms of visual. I mean, it was pretty lacking in terms of the actual battle. They had a couple of ski speeders that literally did nothing, which makes sense. It was an abandoned base. But the actual aesthetic of that place with the red smoke was phenomenal in my opinion, and I love that they picked that place. And it was also portrayed really well in the game, which I have to give DICE big props for, because it was so accurately depicted from the movie. But while we're talking about the Lightspeed ramming of Snoke's ship, that to me just felt like they opened up another massive plot hole. Why has no one thought about this before? Like in episode 4, okay, we got a massive Death Star that has a couple of sensitive spots. Well, why don't we take our biggest cruiser? I mean, sure, it's gonna be expensive to lose it, but we don't really stand a chance. So let's put a small crew that are willing to sacrifice themselves on that thing and just freaking ram the Death Star in Lightspeed. It might not blow up, but you will at least disable its weapon system if you aim at it, and you will cause a lot of damage. Why did no one think about that before? If it's simply brushed off as no one had that idea before, well, in that case, in episode 9, if the First Order has any massive ship or planet-destroying weapon, well, someone better bring up Lightspeed ramming, because they can't just suddenly forget about that, because it was obviously very effective. But now over to another part of the movie that is obviously a very big part, Rey and Kylo Ren, and their bond between the Force and how they are cooperating and fighting in the movie. I have to say that the acting from both Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley was phenomenal, and I really enjoyed most parts of it. I mean, some parts, like the part when Kylo Ren was standing there with a bare upper body and they had to like bring in a joke with, oh, can you cover yourself? Like, it just felt very un-Star Warsy. But overall, their bond and how Snoke actually connects them to trick Rey was great. And I love the fact that we get to see Luke explaining what happened with his Jedi Order, but we get to see it from different perspectives, and it shows that a lot of events can be interpreted differently depending on whose perspective you're seeing it from. Luke thought he did the right thing, Kylo Ren thought he just came to kill him, and I think both were right in one sense, although Luke did definitely fail with that, as he pretty much created Kylo Ren. But he did however say that he could see in his mind that Snoke had already turned him over a long time ago, so in that sense I guess he did the right thing. but their whole bond across the movie was very well portrayed. Although I thought that all the Force powers, such as the Force bond and the way that Luke kind of Force projected himself to the other part of the galaxy, was a little bit weird, considering it's not something we've really seen before in Star Wars, that they just introduced something that could have come in very handy in the other 7 movies. But it's not a big gripe for me. And I mean, if Snoke is one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, he can probably put up a connection like that. But Luke's Force projection was very interesting. I really liked all the visual again on Crate when they were battling. And for some reason I didn't think about this, and Kylo Ren didn't think about it either. But if you look at his Force projection, he has the lightsaber that has already been destroyed by Kylo Ren and Rey. And for some reason this doesn't put Kylo Ren off. Like, he just destroyed that lightsaber that Luke is using. At least I think it was that lightsaber, otherwise I'm sorry. And I also saw some people who said that you couldn't actually see Luke's footprints on the ground. So this just shows that Kylo Ren was in such a rage mode that he didn't pay attention to stuff like this and instead let the resistance escape. So this was a scene that I really liked, the whole scene with the battle, and then just boom, it swaps back to Luke on the island being super concentrated. But at the end when Luke died, I didn't quite understand if that was because he used the Force projection, because that feels like, considering he could physically interact with people like Leia, it has to have been a very draining ability to use. So if he died by using that, which it kind of goes back a little bit to what Kylo Ren said to Rey, that Rey will die if she does that when they were connecting through the Force, then that makes sense. If he did die because of that Force projection, then that's fine. I mean, they don't really explain it directly, but I think that would be a very good explanation to why it happens. But if he just died because he felt like he was dumb, then it was just a bad ending to him, to be honest. But I guess that's kind of up to us to interpret, and in that case I'm gonna go with the fact that he was simply so exhausted from pretty much merging with the Force when he did that Force projection, and that's why he died. And another scene that I haven't talked about yet is Yoda. I was so glad to see him back. He was very well made, if I'm gonna be honest, and I don't really have any complaints. It was a great addition. I didn't expect it to happen, but I was very glad when it happened. Voice acting, the looks of him, it all felt really original trilogy-ish, which I liked. And that he had a little bit of humor and laugh. I don't know, it was just such a nice callback to the old movies, and I don't really have any complaints there at all. But something that I missed when I watched the movie that I read about afterwards is the fact that you can see in the Millennium Falcon that Rey actually took the books from that tree before Yoda destroyed it, although Luke didn't know that. And they also said that Rey has everything she needs to train new Jedi. And well, she really does. She got some training from Luke, and she also has those books, which I can imagine will help a lot. But something that I still don't really know is, will she be a Jedi or something new? I mean, Kylo Ren is a dark side Force wielder, but he is not a Sith per se. So I'm hoping that Rey will not really be a Jedi. She might use those books to kind of guide her to the Force and so on. But don't bring up the dogmatic view, to quote Palpatine, of the Jedi, because that's a flaw that I really think the Jedi had. They were afraid to take the means necessary to win a war or to do the right thing. And Rey does not really feel like a Jedi. She seems like she has some influences from the dark side, and when she's fighting those Praetorian guards, she just like screams like crazy. It's not really the Jedi way, and I like that, and I hope that's something she will carry on, but still be on the light side, if that makes sense. But now back to something I mentioned earlier in the video that I didn't really like, which was the whole story about Canto Bight and Rose and Finn, basically. Because if you think about it, it doesn't make any sense. I honestly thought Holdo was a First Order undercover agent or something at first. But then it turns out that she actually had a plan. And if she just would have told Poe about that plan, the entire plot line of Canto Bight infiltrating Snoke's ship are pointless. They could have cut out those 30 minutes of the movie altogether if Holdo would just have told Poe this is the plan. So that part of the movie just doesn't make sense to me. It makes Canto Bight useless, it makes going into Snoke's ship useless. And it was something that I just felt like, what did they think about when the writers decided that? Who thought it was a good idea to put it in there? It just blows my mind. It doesn't make any sense to me, because it all would have been prevented if Holdo just told Poe this is the plan. And she didn't, and now we got an entirely separate storyline that made no sense to the final plot of the movie at all. They could have used that for so much better, flashbacks or backstory or just something else. Like, I love that we get to see another planet and that we get a little bit of world building at least, because without the Canto Bight part, it would have been really isolated to that one and only spot. So it's not Canto Bight overall that I don't like, it was the fact that the actual story there was pointless and that it was kind of Harry Potter-ish when they were riding those animals. So Canto Bight good, the entire storyline there not so good. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was Leia. I thought she was amazing in this movie, but there were some things that I didn't like, and I think I haven't seen a single person who liked that space walking scene. It really didn't make sense to me, and I felt like I would have been fine if she died there. It would have been a nice ending for her and I wouldn't have complained, but if they actually wanted her to survive, why would you put that really strange scene that I think 95% of all Star Wars fans will dislike in there? Don't get me wrong, I don't mind if she would have used the Force in some life-threatening situation. That's not the problem. That could definitely happen when you have Skywalker blood, but not this way. Like, what were they thinking when they decided to create that scene? It's really weird. They could have done it so much better, and that's basically all I have to say. I didn't expect her to survive the entire movie, if I'm gonna be completely honest, and I don't know how they're gonna handle her in the next movie, now that Carrie Fisher fortunately has passed away. So I think it would honestly have been better to give her a proper send-off in this movie instead of have her like pass away off screen in the next one. And one thing I thought of that would have been so much better in my opinion would have been if her and Holdo swapped positions and she was actually on the ship that rammed Snoke's ship to save the Resistance. It would have been a really honorable ending for Leia, but obviously when they made this movie they didn't know Carrie Fisher would pass away, so they probably planned for her to be in the next movie as well. But I think I'm gonna wrap up my review now, and if I can even call this review, I don't know, just my thoughts basically. There's just so much things going around in my head after seeing this, and I really understand what people said about having to process this movie. I mean, I will see it again and I think I will like it even more. Both Guillaume and Christian from DICE were watching it with me, and they were watching it for the second time, and they noticed a lot of stuff that I didn't. So I'm really excited for my second viewing, where I might pick up on stuff that I missed in the first viewing, and I think it will grow on me then. But as of right now, I'm really happy that they were bold and tried something new, but some parts did not make any sense to me, and I would not rate it as the best Star Wars movie at all, but I would not rate it as the worst one either. So it's something new, something good, something that can be improved. But again, please let me know in the comments below about any of the points I brought up in the video. Do you have a better explanation for it? What's your own thoughts? Because I'm really curious to hear what you think. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.